Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Plastic Depth, episode 4. Honestly, I think it was episode 2 where I said, haha, guys, guess what? I'm not Guns of Courtesing and never making more episodes. But we are at episode 4 after maybe close to 6 months of starting this, and I think that's fine because, hobby. It's not a weekly thing, but I am really excited for our episode today because we have the one and only Silly Penta, co-admin of Bricks in Motion. How you doing, man?
Hello, happy to be here.
Me and Penta go way back. I want to say almost a decade at this point.
At this point, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out. I was like, okay, I know I had you do some voice work for me, and it was literally my first stack entry, I think like 8 or 9 years ago. Unlikely Alliances, yeah. Really wish I would have done a better entry though. That still bugs me. But we have a deep topics to get to, as is the point of this podcast, this little thing I've decided to do. And the film we're going to be talking about is, I would say, it's 7 years old, but I would call it easily a staple, a brick film community favorite, in The Cleaners by Mindgame Studios and One Brick Studios, Nathan Wells. And this came out, I think, at a time where 7 years back in 2018. That was probably back when I want to say a lot of people made really good films that year, and you had a big return of some of the older brick filmers too, like Spagastu did Squad 42, Disillusion. We had my buddy Matt, Bricktail Studios, finally released the animation in 0 Hour. Who else? I think Scorch Bricks, all the old crew from people that I know had all posted in that year, and then The Cleaners was followed up a little later. But this is probably one of the films where I would say every time I watch it, I always find something new that I didn't have before. So I'll kick it over to you, Penta, just to start us off here. Initial thoughts now that we're 7 years removed from the upload.
Yeah, well, still feels like a modern classic. Even maybe it's just a regular classic at this stage. But I mean, it felt like an instant classic upon release. Especially, like just the amount of technical things. In the Bricks in Motion Discord, like, they were posting behind the scenes stuff, and there was streams on YouTube as well, and stuff on Twitter back when brick filmers were actually using Twitter. So like for like 2 years, people were seeing all of these clever tricks and techniques and bits of equipment they were using, and so it felt like it was breaking new ground, I suppose.
Yeah.
And people were like clued into that because they were seeing all the behind the scenes before they saw the film. And so I guess people were just really tuned into all of the technical qualities and how everything looked and what was being used to achieve the look of all the various different shots. It felt like a film where each individual shot had the same level of care and attention put into it.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking what's the best possible way to get this shot across. Like, it's not just, okay, we gotta show the next thing, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because one of the things that got me during this past Brawl and Thack, and obviously it's a little bit different. You can't really compare films made for those contests to the cleaners, but we get like halfway through those contests and we're like, okay, we got to move on to the next thing, or we're not going to make the deadline. And I think
Yeah.
I think in every film in those situations it shows up a little bit, which makes sense, given the time sensitive nature of this. I didn't realize it took them 2 years to do this. um
Yeah.
that's pretty incredible. Man, I didn't know that. I mean, it makes sense, like, because both Zach and Nathan, amazing animators, storytellers, and filmmakers in their own right. So I think that it definitely looks like something that took 2 years, and I mean that in the best way possible.
Well, what's kind of interesting about it is that like the majority of the footage was really filmed in like two quick bursts. Like a weekend when Zach would go to Nathan's house and stay for a couple of nights, and they'd shoot a lot of the film. Like two sessions like that, and then a lot of the rest of it was like a lot of Nathan by himself. Um, but like I guess there was just a lot of other projects and other real life work that they had to do,
Mhm.
so it just kind of stretched out, and then there was a lot of VFX and sound design that was just sort of not getting done for a long time. So it wasn't being filmed continuously for 2 years, but it took 2 years.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Especially at that quality,
yeah,
it it still checks out. But what you mentioned, the VFX, first thing that I noticed, and I had forgotten about this before I was doing my rewatches of it. Something subtle like the clock actually working. Like, I thought when it first came out that it was just a regular clock, like the hands didn't move, and I watched it back. I'm like, oh my god, the hand is moving.
yeah.
Little things. I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's somewhat. I mean, that's VFX, but to me, that was
Mhm.
a good example of groundbreaking things in 2018, where, like, I feel like you have two people before Nathan and Zach. I feel like Forest Fire, whenever he makes something new, he's usually like testing something that I haven't seen before. But if I wasn't thinking about anything that he did, I would say each time that Zach and Nathan respectively have put out something, um, it's always been pretty new and pretty a new take on
Yeah.
maybe something done in the past, but it's clear.
Always, yeah, at the cutting edge, still pushing things forward. Yeah, not just sort of getting comfortable in the old ways that people used to do things in brick filming.
So it's funny because I was trying to, when doing my rewatch, I was trying to figure out why I was kind of like had my eyes glued to the screen for the entire time. And we'll probably jump back and forth because I'm not good at making, clean segues into things. But to your point about every shot feeling like, okay, this is the best, like, how can we shoot this in the best way? I think because of how that was done, I felt like it kind of made the story more enjoyable. Like,
Mhm.
8 years later, 7 years later, I still would like to have, like, can we get cleaners, like, part two, part three, whatever. I'm
Yeah,
really invested in what they have, and I think that you don't see that a lot from a. Sure, the writing can be good and the sound can be good, but even just the depth of how it's shot, I was like, oh, okay, I'm definitely in for all of this, even from just a purely animation level.
yeah. Just like the way everything is laid out in the frame, it's really strong. It's strong like a film that was actually storyboarded. where you'd storyboard just how you want it to look, and then you have to figure out, okay, how can we actually make it look like the storyboard now in camera with these figures. If you want them to fill the frame in a certain way, like like let's say Sergio Leone close up or something, where like the face is going to fill top to bottom.
Yeah.
You if you you're going to have to figure out what lens or what like extension tube or whatever are we going to have to use to actually get that to happen. Whereas if you were just figuring it out on the fly, you might just think, oh well, this is as close as I can get with what I have, so that has to be it. But if you're really trying to match the storyboards, then it's going to be like, oh, I have to figure out some other solution with like some other bit of tech bit of equipment I have to buy to to get it to match what I want.
Yeah, and I have not storyboarded in a while. I think I famously like have shied away from them, but then
I have as well.
Because sometimes I feel like, and again, this comes back to in recent times, me basically just making stuff for contest entries. Even when I'm working on my own film, sometimes a little part of me is like, but why storyboard if I can just mess around with it and find what I want and then go from there.
It probably helps because there was two of them making this. That there was probably a bit more motivation to make storyboards, because I've almost never storyboarded, but like I did have to do storyboards when I made the Minion film for the Lego group, because that's working with a couple of other people as well.
Yeah.
So other than that, I've almost never. Sometimes I've done really rough storyboards to just sort of fill out the edit. Like if I'm doing a tack entry or brawl entry or something, I want to just have the sequence in my mind, especially if you need to know how many shots you can get done in like shot reverse shot. You want to shoot them all as one block to save time in a contest entry.
Right.
I just want to keep it all in order in the timeline, so I can check to make sure I've actually got all the shots that I can get in one setup or on one set before moving on. But yeah, another one that's I guess similar is the Han Solo affair. The Han Solo affair has like amazing storyboards by Tony Mines, which are on you can see them on the wiki, and they're like just the storyboards in themselves are quality art, and you can tell that like the shot composition in the Han Solo affair is so strong, like it's so cartoony, like it's really all well defined, like how the figures look in the frame and how they move across the frame and everything, and you can see all of that in the storyboards. Like it was so well thought out, and from somebody who obviously has a bit more education or knowledge in these sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's like a bit of a secret weapon if you're really good at it.
I bet now, as hopefully as people get around to listening to this, like we'll start seeing comments on other films being like, this must have been storyboarded. it's so strong. But yeah, I didn't know the Han Solo affair was storyboarded too. But again, I was how old was I when that came out? I had to have been maybe, was that 2007? Did that come out then?
It came out in 2002.
What? Okay. So 2002, I was 4. No, I was 5. So I gotta. Maybe I didn't watch it until a little later on.
Yeah, I mean, most of us would have only seen it once it was on YouTube, or actually, it was still on the Lego website until like 2011. So a lot of people would have seen it then.
My first exposure to it was on YouTube, the early days. So it probably was 2008 or something like that. When I saw it for the first time, that was really good for 2002. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I gotta dive into the wiki more. But
that's the thing about the Spite Your Face films, is I still think there's a lot to learn. There's a lot in those Spite Your Face films that people still haven't really caught up to. Like people do technically more fluid animation nowadays, but they don't have the same composition, the same like blocking of characters as like the Han Solo fair and Perla Doc Ock.
That's a good point. Which it, you know what, we're gonna segue into this because I think this is a great place to bring it up. So back to the cleaners. This, I feel like, and maybe anyone in the comments, let us know if you have felt similar. I feel like in the early days of brick filming, at least my era, so 2008, 2009, really all the way up till like 2014, I feel like it was Nathan Wells, Fancy Pants, Mind Game. Those are and Nick Duran. I can't forget Nick Duran. Literally my favorite person ever. I was inspired by all these guys, and
Yeah.
it did come out in how I would shoot my own projects, because I'd see like Nick Duran do Abduction, and I'm like, oh, okay, how can I make like a cool alien ship in the dark? And sometimes I feel like this happens when you start working on something like immediately after getting inspired, you basically end up quasi plagiarizing someone else's work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every brick filmer does that when they start out. Yeah. And we'll probably get into that later.
Yeah. But I think that, because I was trying to figure out if there was another film before The Cleaners that had a similar vibe, and I talked about it in the last episode of the podcast. Another one of Zach's films, which makes sense, but The Profession back in 2014 was a similar vibe for me. 2010? Holy crap. I literally knew that. I knew that. I just talked about it. Why did I think 2014? He put something out in 2014 that I really liked.
Sinner Monologues, maybe?
I think it might have been around there, but that would be the only thing that I thought would be close to this, at least as far as like, I don't know, these Hitman style. I mean, this is more of like a 1970s, crime film. But I couldn't find a whole lot of other things like it that they took inspiration from outside of, the timepiece that it was in. But question for you here: do you think that do you think inspiration, or I guess to put this in a better way, like, where does the line come from like going from inspiration to just quasi, like, all right, not that it's shot for shot of something else, but you clearly know someone watched this film and then was like, how can I make my own spin on it? Do you have an idea of where that line is? Because I don't see it as much as I used to, and we'll get into why I'm bringing that up here in a second, but I'm also not as involved as I used to be, so I'll leave that for you.
I guess it's just one of those things where it's sort of like, you know it when you see it.
Okay.
Like, you can't really explain at what point something crosses over into, having influence but being a completely different thing entirely, and versus being like, oh, I watched this and now I kind of want to do the same thing but myself.
Yeah.
Because
no.
The Cleaners would be one of the primary influences on my own Taco Trouble 2, but I don't think Taco Trouble 2 looks like, it's just it's very much like The Cleaners, isn't it? It's basically the same kind of thing, but but I still think you could tell that the influence is there with like the inset lighting and the just kind of the way the sets look, like the color palettes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
No, that's fair. I'm going back to the Taco Trouble. I just wanted to. I'll have it up on the second monitor if I can just see it a little bit. But I always struggled trying to figure out like where that line would be.
But you
But
mentioned like there not being much in brick filming, but like the cleaners before it, and I think that that would come from the influences being outside of brick filming primarily. You know, it's more from feature films like No Country for Old Men is a big one, but
mhm.
also just like actual 1970s films. And you know, from there they're like borrowing techniques like the split diopter shots, which are like most common in the 70s.
Mhm.
And you know, I think or we all think that The Cleaners was the first brick film to have real split diopter shots in a brick film. You know, there was a couple before that like sort of faked it with just split screen visual effects. Like there was one Jay Silver did one in '06 that was a shot from The Untouchables, which is a Brian De Palma film, and Brian De Palma uses loads of split diopter shots, and so he did it like you take two passes of the same shot and
Yeah.
combine them visually. But yeah, but like when the cleaners use split diopter on the lens, you know, everyone in brick filming is like, "Oh, what's that? What's a split diopter?"
Oh, I didn't think about it like that, but that's true. Like at the when the main source of inspiration is not from a brick film, okay, that would clearly make it stand out. And
Mhm.
which small tangent here, but from the BIM Discord, I think this was a conversation that was happening. I want to say maybe 6 months ago. I honestly don't remember who the individuals were, but it was in the brick filming chat, and basically someone said, because I think someone was asking about like the what some would refer to as the golden age, or like when everyone was really active. Again, think what 2007 to 2014 ish maybe. Someone said, "Oh, why does everyone?" I guess in terms of film quality, they're like, "Why has the quality changed from then to now?" And someone said, "I think the majority of the brick filmers who were pretty active in the early 2000s and the early 2010s, respectively, all were either film majors, film minors, or just had a big interest in filmmaking and then used Lego as the
Mhm.
easiest medium they could get to kind of, realize those visions for the films that they had." Would you say that's accurate?
Well, yeah, not not all the brick filmers, because like you know, it's very easy to look back in history and only look at the best brick films that were made. But like in any era, like the vast majority aren't going to be of that quality.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, yeah, in like the old like bricks and motion community, like the big names, yeah, the vibe was people who, yeah, they wanted to make films and they just Lego was what they had to make them. Uh, so and there wasn't much of a focus on the animation itself. And I feel like a big difference between now and then is that nowadays there's so many people who, you know, they do incredibly technical animation that's like way beyond anything you would have seen years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, they're more focused on just making fight scene videos and just like shorter things, like not like full films that are
Yeah.
aiming to emulate like feature films with fully fleshed out stories and characters,
Yeah.
which of course
Uh.
is what I'd like to see more of nowadays.
That immediately reminded me of the what was my favorite bra entry this year. Was when uh what was it? Was it you guys getting taken hostage for the original IP? Um, that was
Oh
my
yeah.
favorite entry of that entire contest. But um, to keep us somewhat on track here, with the
Mhm.
inspiration line and how that kind of would bleed into to other parts, that isn't not a one for one carbon copy, but like I said before, like we know, okay, they watched this and then did this. So there is a term now for this that I honestly didn't know until I was told last year, like cleaner's core. That that is a thing that has happened over the last couple of years since the film's release, and I found a couple of them over the last couple of weeks because I wanted to just watch them again. I knew we were going to talk about this, and while we won't, talk about the films in depth because this is not a critique. It's just part of making stuff. How do you keep that from happening, because obviously you're always going to have people who watch something and either say, okay, I want to do my own version like you said, but then have it be its own separate thing. I feel like when I've watched some of the cleaner's core videos, I from opening shot, I was like, oh my god, this is very, very close.
It's I wouldn't say it's something we don't want to keep it from happening. It's like I'd rather people take influence from the cleaners over other things that don't have the same qualities to them. It would be nice if people could if they start from making cleaners core, that's very much like, oh, it's just kind of the cleaners again. If they start from there but then expand, take that but then start doing their own things with the influence, that would be a much better starting point than being something lesser.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. Sometimes over the years we've observed these films that where somebody has watched the cleaners and basically thought, I want to do something like that, and we just kind of like sort of say, oh, it's another cleaners core film, like as a kind of a jokey name, but not exactly. It's not exactly an insult or anything. It's just something that can be observed, and it's just somewhat. It's kind of amusing. Obviously people are kind of flattered when they can see that they have influenced somebody so directly. So it's not a bad thing or anything. I mean, it's not like it's not meant to be an insult or anything, but it is kind of like sometimes it is quite noticeable that like it's basically just the cleaners again. But you got the light coming in the window with the blinds, and you got somebody kicking down the door, and there's usually a dead body at some point. Just the way the light and the set and the use of music, I guess.
Yeah, the music and the cleaners had a very warm feel to it. And you kind of have seen that in some of these cleaners core projects that have come out, and to be fair to the people who make them, they're their own stories. They're not copying what Zach and Nathan have done really at all, but I found it really interesting that so many people, and maybe that's just because I am now watching people in their wave of inspiration. I'm sure, like when I started, basically everything I did. I'm sure you're familiar with Jack Spelt in the Sandstone Caves. Really, you've never seen that stop motion? Okay, all right. I'll get it to you later, and we'll cut this out. But no. So Jack Spelt in the Sandstone Caves is a brick film that actually came as part of a teaching manual. When I think I was 8, so I think this was 2005. My parents got me a stop motion camera, software, and the stop motion animation book, and it came with a brick film called Jack Spelt Sandstone Caves, and it basically recreated in the book. It showed you how to make a set, how to put your camera in the set, because it was a webcam at that point, so you could literally just put it anywhere. And one of my films, The Cave, was just a copy of Jack Spelt in the Sandstone Caves. Maybe I changed it a little bit because I didn't have what the book had, but I changed a little bit of the lines in it too, and it basically just I basically just copied the whole thing. But I remember making it and thinking, this is my original work of art. I was not influenced by anyone ever. um, but no, I guess it's interesting for me now to see a new group of people take inspiration from someone I also took inspiration from, and having it be their own thing. And I think that's cool. I think that's there's still hope for more original films.
That's crazy though. I've never heard of this brick film.
Oh my
And like I just looked it
gosh.
up on YouTube now, and I've heard it. And I've also found like other people making just essentially remakes of.
Yeah, it was it's really, it was my first introduction to a story in a film, in a Lego film. So I was like, oh cool, get voice actors, this and that. And yeah, no, one of
Yeah,
my favorite things actually.
yeah. I mean, you can say if you want to. I think it's interesting.
All right, yeah. Oh wait, so that means this will now go on the wiki. This has to go on the wiki now.
Yeah, I think it should go on the wiki. Yeah, I'm gonna look into this and find out all the surrounding info that I
Yes.
can find. Yeah.
Awesome. So in light of that, what I think is honestly maybe the most, maybe not the most important. That sounds dramatic, and we're not here for the dramatics here. But this is more of a YouTube thing than I feel like a brick filming thing, and I think not unnecessarily, but it coincidentally kind of flows together with what the community does around stop motion. So I went back to not just your channel, Zach's. I don't know if you remember Walter Benson,
Yeah.
even the Four Monkeys, all of those people, and I kind of went back to their upload schedule. That, not that they had one, but relatively infrequent. Obviously, we're all older now, so it's even less frequent. But there was never a set schedule to when animators would release their films. And and we've talked about this before privately, but because of how YouTube has changed over the last really almost 20 years, so too has the ability to be seen and to get your film
Yeah.
out there, not just for the masses, but even just for the people who would be interested in it because of being a part of the brick film community. So that long-winded intro to say, there seems to be a lot of, might be a blanket statement, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like as more people and as newer people come into the brick filming space, and I see this a good bit in forums and in discords, like, how can I get my stuff out there to a wide audience? And then someone will link a video about retention in Lego films, which I kind of chuckle at a little bit. But can you talk about how what you've observed in the brick filming community as it relates to YouTube changes and how that's affected the people who make the stuff that we do?
Well, I mean, certainly the predominant or the most commonly seen sort of styles of brick films has changed, which I think has been largely influenced by YouTube, and not even so much in people like chasing views,
Mm-hmm.
but like I feel like people, whatever like inspires them first is going to get like ingrained in their mind,
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so like when we arrived in, yeah, we all looked up to like Mind Game and Nathan Wells, and I mean for me like Out of Time and like all the old duo films and the Left Field films, um, and stuff like that, and because like these were widely viewed, like The Letter, these were all
Right.
big films on YouTube as well as in the forum community. Um, and so you know, it would be very easy for us to kind of say, oh, people are just making all these throwaway short stuff these days for views. But then if you
Mm-hmm.
look at their channels, they make these films, like hundreds of these videos, and most of them don't have a lot of views or anything. But that's just what they're making.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel like because of YouTube changes, especially around like 2020 or something, YouTube started to favor like, yeah, if you could do loads of short videos and upload them really quickly and consistently, I guess that's just what people started seeing first, and they were saying that that's what everyone else was doing. Uh, so that's just kind of what they do, and not even necessarily because they think that it's going to get them views, but it's just what it just seems like that's the done thing. Just
And
like how back years ago, the dumb thing was to just make your own dynamic duo. Again, like not even for views, but as well, everyone in brickfilming makes a dynamic duo. But so I mean, I wish that in brickfilming there was more uh awareness or reverence, I guess, for the old, not necessarily old, but the classic films and the films that are in the same sort of style of having stories and characters and strong shots, stuff like Heck of a Day, or
yeah,
stuff that wins Brawl or wins the summer contest, which used in the old days would be widely seen, but nowadays only get a couple of thousand views. Where like they're still made, and there's more of them than ever that are made for the contests, but without the same level of views, they won't have the same level of wide influence over the community.
right.
So like the contests are kind of like a last sort of stronghold, I guess, of influence where people know that this is the style that they ought to be like aiming for, looking up to, or you're trying to eventually get on the level of. Um, like
Yeah,
how we used to look, eventually one day want to be making films like the old Osda Boris films, or again, Mind Game.
yeah. No, no, that. So I I agree. I think that I feel like like back in, let's just use 2008, right? You could upload one project and that could be your film for the year. And that entire
Yeah.
year your channel would grow at an insane rate, especially if it was what I guess the community considers a high quality film, right? And I would say like a good example of this is way back when the Four Monkeys were doing Galactic Smugglers. Like the not only were those films not super often, but when they were uploaded, like they got shared, and again, the views back then are different than views now, right? So I would
Mhm.
say 20K in 2009, your brick film is basically viral. And that's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation. Like we're not talking about virality here. But is what I'm saying making sense a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I guess back then people thought of their YouTube uploads, that was their filmography. you know, like you didn't want to just put a million things on your channel. Um, Whereas I guess there's a wider conversation across the entire internet, and or even outside the internet, where everything has been sort of become content. People call everything content now,
Yeah, right, right.
and that's, I guess, that's kind of part of the difference, is like where people are approaching what they make more as content rather than as films. Um, but I mean, this may be sort of getting a bit more off topic, or away from what you actually asked, and
It's
more just
fine.
things that I think about all the time.
Yeah, no, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
No, it's
But there was
okay.
one thing I wanted to say about
Yeah.
the cleaners core phenomenon,
Hmm.
which is that, like, I think what you see with most of the cleaners core type videos is what they notice about the cleaners is largely, or what they feel like they can emulate is largely on an aesthetic level. Like it's the lighting and the sets and stuff. Where like I don't know. I don't know if it'd be fair to say that they miss other elements, or like they go over people's heads or whatever. But like, the Cleaners is also good because it has characters with personalities and with voices, and as we were talking about, like the way all the shots have so much thought put into them and stuff,
Yeah.
and how they're laid out, not just in how like the lighting looks. I guess there has been a bit of a tendency in fiction for people to just sort of they shine a light in the camera and suddenly it's like, whoa, fancy! I've got a light. But there's more to it than that. There's more qualities to making the shot look cool.
Yeah. that is you hit the nail on the head there, because I think one thing that I immediately get, like after I've seen Cleaner's core content, is there I go saying content now. Oh my god. But like the technical animation is almost never there. Everything else is outside of what you mentioned, like the characters with the voices and how they're made and fleshed out. I think it's that, and I think it's the animation. Although I have seen, and this is probably me just again not being as active as I used to be 8 or 9 years ago, but I feel like now more than ever, people are doing really great. Like I feel like people are coming up with their own animation styles, and they're not so much into. And this is not a critique, but they're not as into the. I don't want to say ease in and ease out method, but they're shooting. Well, 24 and 2s is. We can have a conversation about that later. I have my own thoughts on that, but I a lot of the recent like contest entries I've seen people use 12 FPS, and make it look really, really good. Make it still feels smooth, even though you've got less frames, and maybe part of that's the ease in and ease out method they're still applying at that frame rate. But I think you did hit the nail on the head there. Like there are technical elements that get missed because I don't know if it's because they don't have, they're using what they have, and that's the level of expertise that they're at, or skill level. But that's an interesting part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the kind of classic, like, like first year film student sort of stereotype of where it's like, oh, I'm gonna make a Tarantino type film, or a Wes Anderson type film, or a Edgar Wright type film.
Yeah.
And they have like surface level like aesthetic qualities, like if Wes Anderson type thing, and they're like, oh, it's got a color palette that's kind of like Wes Anderson, it's all symmetrical and all, but like those directors also have well memorable characters and well written dialogue, that it feels like to just sort of boil it down to, oh, it's a symmetrical shot, like that's kind of missing what actually makes those Wes Anderson films like enjoyable.
Right. Yeah. It's
and also like this, yeah, the way things move across the frame, and like that's part of it as well. Like, I'm also thinking of like the sort of AI slop where it's like, oh, what if Star Wars was Wes Anderson, and everything is just oh, it's a symmetrical shot, and that's it. Like that's just missing so much, so many qualities beyond just I see symmetry.
Ah, man, we really could have a really long discussion about this thing in particular, but like I know that everyone at Bricks in Motion, not just on the admin team and the people who volunteer. Well, I guess you all volunteer, like we all do that. But like, it is always really cool to see new people like come into the Discord and they ask like, new brick filmer, how can like what do I need to start out? And I really like
Mm.
to see the people who have been in it for a couple years, not even like the long timers like you and myself, but like the new like first year, second year, third. Give some really nuanced but like helpful tips. Like it's like,
Yeah.
hey, find your own style. This is how you would find
Mm.
it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the thing is like, what I want to do is to hopefully make people think about things in a different way, or guide people towards thinking about certain aspects that they aren't really putting as much attention to. Like I'm not just complaining about, oh, you know, these brick films don't do this.
Right.
I don't like it. That's bad. Like
Yeah.
and it's the same with doing the World of Brick Films podcast. Like if we're talking about certain topics, like my hope would be to the suggestion is like, hey, you should also consider these things and put attention into these areas. Like, hopefully make people think about these type of things more in depth, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you kind of said it earlier. It's like, um, make films, not content.
Mhm.
I think that's a good place to start. And I understand that um not everyone has a background in film. I actually
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of people don't, and background for me. As soon as I got a stop motion camera, that's when I decided, oh, when I grew up, I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I was headed that way until I was about 16 or 17, and then I realized it wasn't gonna be able to do what I needed to do. But because of me wanting to be a filmmaker at a young age, that's what really got me thinking about all the things that I didn't when I started brick filming. Like it wasn't just making like a fight scene or
Mhm.
I don't know, uh, Lego Avengers versus Thanos or something like that. But
Yeah. Well,
um,
yeah, and like of course there are some people who, yeah, their only interest or their primary interest is just the technical animation, and that's essentially, yeah, their main interest, and that's okay. And like there have been some people rig filming who just basically do a lot of really technical animation tests, and then they might go on to become professional animators,
mhm,
where in a studio or on a set, like their only job is to do the animation. Like all the cinematography and the lighting has been set up for them beforehand. Like if they're working at Stupid Buddy or something,
yeah,
and like that's cool as well. It's just that I don't know. I just there's so many people making big films where it kind of feels like if they'd had that influence of the more film-like stuff, like if that was what was seen as this is what brick filming is,
right.
surely there would be more people kind of aiming for that.
And I think that that is why I really enjoy seeing the annual contests that Bricks in Motion holds. I
Yeah.
think that anyone who has entered for a while, or even if they're just on the bubble, maybe that they've never entered, but they're just a viewer, they can tell like, okay, you know, it's not just about animation. It's about how you incorporate the theme, the story. How does it all mesh? And that's a very good point about maybe some people are making those really technical tests, right? And they have everything else set up for them, and they're not thinking about characters and that design and how that can be portrayed through Lego. So I think that I'll give you a final question ish here. Outside of, I mean, obviously the contest that you guys do, how can everyone kind of encourage the focus on I would say, I guess, being an overall uh not to put the emphasis on the filmmaking aspect of it, but like how to be an overall like I can't even get this out of my mouth. How to be a brick filmer that focuses on all of the things instead of just one of the things.
That's kind of a hard question because I guess we'd all like to know the answer.
Fair enough.
And I guess on Bricks in Motion, what we've found is the best way is just the contests, and keeping the contests with the same vibe that they've always had. That seems to be the most, like, that does directly guide people into making the films that we like to see the most. It's like we could complain in the Discord all day, or we could complain on podcasts all day, and like, oh, we wish people would make more films like this or like this. And that just kind of feels like, yeah, you're just screaming into the void, I guess.
The void, yeah.
But hosting the contest, it has a much more direct. You can directly see the line from the contest has winners like this. It asks people to make films like this, and then people actually show up with films like that. And sometimes it is people who usually they're only making really short things, but then when they enter the contest, like they understand, like this is the type of film you're supposed to make for these contests, and then they actually make that type of film, like an actual film type film.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's really hard to say because in the old days on the forums, like I guess it was it was essentially done by everyone policing each other and everyone being really harsh and critical and mean all the time, which in ways it had its upsides. Like people would really just say exactly what they thought about everything. Like, oh, you need to. The story is bad, or the joke is bad, and you need to be better, and this and that, and and then over time, I think it just sort of felt like, maybe that's not really the vibe anymore. So I do have the sense of like nobody ever criticizes anything anymore, and like.
No, I agree. I think that's fair.
They do on Bricks in Motion, but like you'd see on anywhere elsewhere, you're just gonna have a million comments that just say "fire, amazing, best thing ever, best thing I've ever seen." Whereas like, if that's the only feedback you're getting, there's no
reason to change.
There's no push to approach things from in a different way. So it's like, well, it's hard to say, it's hard to say what the best approach is. Like, you don't want everything. You don't want it to go back to everyone being just an asshole all the time.
Yeah, right. And I realize it was loaded question, but I think that the best thing that anyone can do, and maybe, is to be more honest. I think that is. I feel like that comes out the most again in the comment sections of contest entries. I feel like that's where, if you're gonna find it, you're gonna find it there. At least like on the YouTube level. Obviously, here in the Discord, there's a lot of people who explicitly ask for feedback, and they want to know, like, okay, can I do better lighting here? How's this dialogue and stuff like that. So a lot of the conversations that I think happened not just on forums back in the day, they also used to happen pretty much exclusively like on YouTube. Like if you go back and look at the comment sections of the films of like 2005 to 2012, like a lot of the discourse was happening in the comments section, and not so much where it is now. Like we've all taken it not offline, but we've taken it to the Discord server and other places, which is good. Like I feel like now there's more places to get critique on your work more than there was in the past, and I feel like you have more access to various people. Like I always think about this, and I thought about it a lot this year since I unretired from making films. But like I am now in a Discord server with people like yourself, Zach, Nathan, Graham, and a lot of these people were individuals that I got on YouTube before I had my account and saw their videos, and I was like, wow, like I can't wait to, be like them or be as good as them. And now, basically 20 years later almost, I can have conversations with them. They're still making stuff, albeit a lot less because they're doing other stuff. So I think that Bricks in Motion does a really good job of bringing together everyone in a way that moves people forward, not just in filmmaking, but even in the little things too. So you guys have really done a good job.
Of course, it can be frustrating a lot of the time to. I think something that Nathan once said was that, like, it's frustrating to have gone for so many years, like, not, you had to learn all these things over so many years, and then it feels like you've wasted time. Like, oh, I wish I knew this years ago. So then when you see other people and you're trying to give them advice, and it's like they aren't getting it immediately, you become sort of frustrated because, like, no, you're wasting your time. Like, it took me so many years to get all this, and now I'm trying to save you from wasting that time, but it's not happening. That's kind of a funny thing, but yeah, basically, I think a lot of what, or pretty much all of what I've learned of how to get better was just from hanging around, people like that, and seeing all the stuff they were working on and learning from them and getting critique from them. It is always great. It's great when somebody shows up in the Discord and basically says, like, please give me your most critical critique, like down to the tiniest detail. Like,
rubbing your hands together. I could hear it. You're just like ready to go.
Because I do feel it is pretty annoying if somebody posts a film and if the response they get is sort of like, oh, there's a light leak at 1:34. Oh, there's a camera bump at 37 seconds. That's so pedantic and just annoying. But, like, if somebody comes along and says, I want critiques, like, I want to know, I want to hear everything completely unvarnished. That's
refreshing.
It's refreshing, not just because you get to just say what you think without any filters, but also to know that people are going to be receptive to it, and, like, they want to hear it. Their goal is to improve. That's nice to know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that puts a bow on it, honestly, pretty well. I can't really add to that there, but as of right now, for any of you listening, this is, well, we're filming this at the end of September, but it'll be out here, I'm hoping, by the time the summer contest is done. But we're gonna be at that point a couple months away from THAC again, and I'm excited to get back into that. But thank you all for hanging out with me for an hour. I know that this is a lot longer than the episodes go, but I really wanted to dive into a bunch of different things with Penta. We haven't talked in a while, at least through voice. So
it's been a while, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me and talk about all things Brick Films and BIM. And if any of you, which I don't get a lot of traction to my channel, so I know that everyone watching this is already there, but in the event that there's one person out there who's like, what is this? Go check out Bricks in Motion. Go check out the Discord. Love to have you. A lot of great people in there. A lot of people to learn from and connect with and build some friendships with. Because I think another underrated thing about Bricks in Motion is how everyone has been friends for like a decade plus. At least a lot of the people when the Discord started anyway, like, came from places before. So you can find a lot of good stuff here. So. Yeah, we'll be back for episode 5, maybe by the end of the year. Kind of just, I really fly the seat of my pants with this, and I feel like it's a fun way to do it, because as we said, make films, not content. So, yeah. Thanks, Penta, again.
That's the guiding principle. Yeah.
We will see
All
you,
right, thank you.
soon.
Yeah. Goodbye.